Hi everyone, it's Jason Whitehead here, co-host of the Jason's Take On. I'm here with Jason Noble over in London, and today we're very excited to greet our guest, Lauren Culbertson, who is the co-founder and CEO of LoopVOC. Lauren is on a mission to help companies use customer feedback to drive better growth strategies, and she has a lot of great and exciting insights here, so we're really excited to have her join us. And as you know, if you're a frequent listener to the Jason's Take On, we're always looking for people to be bold in customer success, and Lauren has some great ideas and great experiences here. And today, Lauren's going to share her thoughts around how to focus better and align teams around the customers, understand customer needs, and turn insights into action that will grow your organization. And as you know, this is a really important topic, so thank you so much for being here.
Yes, Jason, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Excellent. So Lauren, why don't you go ahead and just tell people about yourself and your background and a little bit about the work of your company, LoopVOC.
Yeah, absolutely. So I spent my career before starting Loop in B2B SaaS and started out as an SDR, making 60 dials a day, smiling and dialing.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first things I noticed on those calls was how much information I was gathering on the front line about what the company I worked for needed to do to really better serve customers. But I was amazed by how much focus was put into capturing information about the one lead I might get a day, and how little was put around actually what people were telling us they needed for them to become a lead. So the things they needed to improve with pricing or product functionality or their customer experience in general. And when I was promoted into marketing, I was even more shocked because we were doing surveys to collect this information that everyone on the front line was hearing every day. And so that's when I really became interested in how companies are kind of closing that gap between their customers and leadership who's making these big strategic decisions every day. And I was there during a really interesting and pivotal time at a company that was transitioning from being an on-prem legacy software company to the cloud. And that's where I really got to test some ideas for changing the way that people listen to customers. And so I created a process for all of our frontline leaders to be able to give feedback from the places where customers were giving it. So looking at online reviews, support tickets, sales calls, and every week we'd take these insights on what we're doing well, what needed to change to leadership, and what we should do about it. And it was really incredible how it impacted our growth. You know, we were a 5,000 person company at the time, and we were moving at the speed of a startup because the leaders at the top were connected to the problems that were happening on the front line. But it took a lot of work, obviously, to coordinate all of that and read through all the text and listen to it and extract the key issues that were coming out. And so that is when I had the vision for Loop. Then I ended up going out and starting, which really is a solution that can aggregate feedback across all these sources, across all these places where customers are already giving it, and then use text analytics to extract the key issues that are coming out of it and really provide leadership with insights where they can focus their time on what action they're taking versus trying to sift through data to understand what's going on.
Wow. So it's a fascinating story, that. I think it's surprising that so many companies have this same problem, and you've got all of these disparate sets of customer information coming in that quite often for a customer, it goes into kind of a black hole.
Yeah.
And you never see the outside of it. And if you're that one team that is trying to drive that customer focused change, it can be a very frustrating thing to do without the right tools there. Tell us a bit more about kind of the kind of motivation for this. You know, it is something that a lot of organizations really struggle with, and to have the leadership in a 5,000 person organization actually say yes, they'll do it, there must have been a huge opportunity there as well. What kind of made you say, right, I need to do this separately? And what's kind of your mission that you're going to the market with? Kind of what's that voice that you're going to the market with, and what differentiates you?
Yeah, so I think the reason that I felt inclined to, to break away, take a risk, and do my own thing that really focuses on solving this problem for companies is when I looked around at tools for helping our company do this in an automated way, really the only solutions that existed were these really big enterprise solutions that required a lot of service and hand-holding, and really it required a lot of time to get up and running. And, you know, my mission for Loop, and really where I felt there could be a differentiated offer in the marketplace, was to create something that is very simple and is kind of adopts the agile mentality of product management, which is, you know, things don't have to be perfect and all architected before you take action. You know, there's insights that are coming up that might not be validated with 100% accuracy by market research, but if you see the same problem coming up over and over again, do something about it, try something, take a small step in action. And so that was really like seeing the impact that that way of thinking had on my company. You know, it really inspired me just to know how many companies struggled with this and how that change in mentality impacted the culture of the company. Like when you have frontline team members that feel empowered, it totally changes the atmosphere and going to work every day. And so I felt very motivated to help as many companies as I could get to that place.
That's fantastic. That is really cool. Yeah. You know, I've been a consultant for years and worked with a lot of different organizations and different sizes, and seen so many different cultures and different, you know, way people will give lip service to things but not actually deliver it through. And, you know, I love that you've written and talked so much about your customer-led growth strategies. And, you know, I think a lot of people are talking about it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of organizations are still, you know, a long way from truly achieving this and really embracing it, even though they may want to, but they haven't gotten there yet, or some of them even just don't quite get it yet. So tell us, you know, what do you mean by customer-led growth strategy, and what do you think are the most prominent challenges organizations have with truly adopting one?
Yeah, so when I think about customer-led growth, I kind of put it in the framework of product-led growth, which is a really big, hyped up framework right now, and it makes a lot of sense, and I totally believe and strive to be a product-led growth company at Loop. The problem, though, with only thinking about it through the lens of product-led growth is product-led growth is all about removing friction for the customer to deliver value as soon as possible. So really understanding the experience that the customer goes through when you're using the tool, and that every part of your business model should be delivered through your product. The problem is, though, that if people aren't aligned on what the customer needs and what that value is, then it doesn't really matter how much friction you remove, you're delivering the wrong things. And I think where product-led growth really fails to offer a framework is around how you align these multiple functions at your company around what the customer needs. And so to me, customer-led growth is really the supplement to product-led growth of how you unify leaders around one understanding of what your customers need. And so you can focus your collaboration on building better growth strategies and driving that value. I think the challenge is that customer feedback is extremely siloed at companies, and you have, you know, functional owners that will be collecting different pieces of feedback. So even if you break this down in one online review, which is often a place where you can get a lot of constructive criticism. You know, it's for software companies, places like G2 Crowd or Capterra. And, you know, just one online review can contain feedback that impacts your product, what features are missing. It can impact how you're delivering support. So if people complain about your speed that it takes to get an answer to a question, and they can complain about pricing or positioning. And that impacts, and even in that example, you know, 3 or 4 different groups at a company that would need to take action from that one piece of feedback. And if you take a step back from that, you know, every function at a company is getting different feedback like this, but in their siloed channels. So typically when I go to organizations, you know, if I'm talking to customer success or experience, they are very hesitant to do anything with online reviews. Oh, that's a marketing channel. Oh, that's marketing fluff. I don't want to read online reviews. That's not a good source of feedback.
We've all heard that as well, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But then when I say, read this piece of feedback,
Yep.
like they're shocked that it's actually the same type of feedback they're hearing in their channels, which would be like NPS surveys, right?
Yep.
And it's like, if we can all bring this together in one place, then at least we're working off the same set of assumptions. We should still debate each other about what we do about the issue, but at least we're not trying to argue based on different sets of data that we have. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think you've hit on some really, really key points there. The whole issue about silos, marketing think it's only their feedback, but it is, how do you break down those silos and get everyone to realize that this is our feedback? How do we take the right actions off it? And I love the way you then talked about how you can then debate about what you do with it, but you're all working off that same central view of the truth. We know what the customers are saying. I think a lot of the problems that a lot of organizations have is they don't know how to go about figuring out what's going on with customers, what they want, what they need. And there's actually lots of manual processes they've got to do it. And I think when you started up at LoopVOC, you did a very similar thing. It was very manual to start with. Can you tell us a bit more about kind of the process you went through there, what worked, what didn't work, and some of your big lessons that you've learned from that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so when I first did this at the company I was with prior, there were things that worked really well and things that I definitely would do differently. Kind of the key steps that I took to implement a process to do this manually was, one, I was designated the quarterback of this initiative. And so I was in product marketing, but I, was empowered to recruit leaders across multiple functions because the CEO said, this is an initiative, this is important, and Lauren is quarterbacking it. And so that, because the CEO had said that, I had no problem recruiting my key stakeholders from every function, which was the first step I had to do, was, okay, who is going to represent sales, support, renewals, marketing, and even different aspects of marketing. So we looked at, prospect marketing, customer marketing, and I tried to have a representation from every kind of stage of the customer journey, and each of those leaders were responsible for sifting through their channels of feedback. So for sales, it would obviously be like lost opportunities or won opportunities. For renewals, it'd be, why people churned. And every Tuesday, we would meet as a leadership team, and we would review what are the key opportunities, the wins, the challenges, and what actions do we want to recommend coming out of the feedback. So it could be like, this week we're getting a lot of complaints about this product feature, and that is impacting new sales and renewals. Okay, well, let's bring that to leadership, because on every Thursday, we would meet with the C-suite, and we would bring them our asks, and every Thursday, we would make things happen. And so I think what worked really well about that was C-suite involvement. Like, that was key for getting people to participate weekly, but also to show up in those Thursday meetings. And really, like, there's no better way to drive accountability than if, the top people at your company are expecting you to come with problems, which a lot of times is, not the culture that you set. You have your middle managers that are afraid to bring up problems. But this said, like, I am expecting you to bring problems and asks. And if you don't hit your numbers and goals, like, you had every opportunity to show like what the challenges were. What I would do differently, at some point, that same great strength became a challenge because these meetings became political. And so people would show up and want to be seen in a good light. So there was a lot more focus on the wins in some cases than the challenges. which it is important to share what you're doing well, but it kind of became like almost like a monthly business review where we were giving shout outs to sales reps or renewals reps. And like, that's important, but it made this meeting kind of evolve into something that it was not intended to. And so I think what I would have done differently is really been clear about that up front when it started evolving, and say like, this meeting is for critical feedback. Other meetings are for, the rah-rah session. Let's focus this on like continual improvement.
Right. Yeah. How to move from that, keep it learning focused and growth focused.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's great to hear that. And I love what you're saying too about like marketing and CS, or we have our data, you have your data, all that stuff. And I think in a lot of organizations, there is a perception that, voice of the customer and insights and all that stuff really is a marketing function. And, you mentioned earlier fighting over whose data. And it sounds like a lot of other departments aren't really harnessing full potential of customer insight. And, is this the case? And is it that they don't know what to do with it? They don't know what actions to take? So I guess sort of related to that is, how should other groups, sales, customer success, product, how can they best use insight and voice of the customer information to really drive the improvements you talked about?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And I've talked to a lot of companies, and there's really two groups that I've seen that own this, and oftentimes the other is left out, and it's either marketing or customer success. About a year ago, product management was also in that, but I've seen that kind of shift away with the rise of the chief customer officer. And I think that's because a lot of times we were thinking about, customer issues, the things being brought up as how we should build our product features. But with the rise of customer-led growth and like experience, you also want to focus on, our support model and pricing and positioning. I think that the biggest challenge is siloed data. So oftentimes it's, if marketing is leading it, they don't have access to the NPS surveys. And, I was just working with a marketer last week who, she's spearheading this initiative, and she was like, I have buy-in from our chief experience officer and our chief marketing officer. But then I went to our director of customer success, which is her peer, and he doesn't want to give me access to NPS survey data. And it's like, and you think you're like, oh, what's up with this guy? Like, why is he like that? But when you dig in, you find that it's because he is so under-resourced and slammed. He's like, I am, that's another thing. This is going to expose issues that I'm going to have to solve. And like, that is definitely on him, but it's also on his manager for not making it clear that it is a safe space, and that just because feedback is brought up doesn't mean that you have to solve all the issues. Like, it exposes issues, and then we can have a conversation about resourcing. But like, I think that's a gap that is often overlooked, is middle management is often where it breaks down. And so it really requires leaders being super thorough in understanding where the breakdown is across the customer experience internally, and making sure that, everyone is empowered to kind of work together and share data.
Yeah, interesting. It always does come down to the personalities and politics and perceptions at some point.
Yes.
Is, both an opportunity and exhausting to try and work your way through all that good stuff.
Yeah. Yes. Yep.
When you guys have been out speaking to kind of customers now for LoopVOC, is that challenge common, that you're seeing a lot of executives and teams share those same challenges, or are there any other key ones to kind of adopting the service and the solution that they've got?
Yeah, I think that is absolutely the biggest challenge is, when you think about companies embracing voice of the customer, it's hard because it's not just one function. Frankly, that's our biggest challenge too, is that a lot of times, investors will want us to, start by focusing only on one function. Say, you can scale really fast if you focus on one function, just serve the marketers. And it's like, that's not the value of voice of the customer. Voice of the customer the value is at the intersection of functions. It is when you bring all of that feedback together to understand across the entire experience, like, what are customers struggling with? because then you can tie it to real metrics like new revenue and churn, not just one siloed function. I think the biggest issues that I've seen for organizations around this is leadership buy-in. Like if leaders don't trust their frontline employees or their customers to give feedback that is real, then it will never work. And so like figuring out if your leaders aren't bought in, there's really nothing that you can do except try to educate them. Luckily, there's a big movement, and like, people like you guys are helping inform leaders and companies how important this is. But, even once you have leadership bought in, then you kind of have to make sure that your employees and customers know that their feedback is encouraged, that they should be able to give feedback and it's not a shoot the messenger mentality. And I think that also we overlook that requires training to be able to give good feedback that's really insightful. You can't just expect someone to know how to do that. There's a lot of, personality issues that come into play. People are uncomfortable telling people criticism. It's just human nature. And so there's methods, and there's a lot of books that are written about this, but it's really creating this culture of transparency where you're showing sales reps how to make sure when someone complains about price, you're digging in. Well, what exactly is it that makes pricing a problem? Are there new solutions that are cheaper, that are making it seem more expensive? Is it that the organization has cut budgets, or is it just that they're not a good fit for our tool in general and we should walk away? Like, these are the types of things that I think if you don't train your employees on how to do this, then it's easy to dismiss, oh, well, every sales rep complains about price. Well, right now, especially, people are changing how and what they're buying, and they're becoming more price sensitive. And so you should be training your reps on how to understand and give feedback on where you could change.
Absolutely. Times are definitely changing around that.
Yeah.
When I saw a demo of Loop, and it was really great. It was really exciting to see what you guys have put together. I encourage everyone to go out and book a demo. It's definitely worth your time. But one of the things that really intrigued me when I saw your product is not only how it lets you get insights about your customers, what they're saying about your product and where you are, but it also gives you insights about what people are saying around your competitors and where their issues and challenges. Almost like what's the market thinking in general of what's the gold standard and what's not, and help people do that. And this seemed like an advancement to me over most traditional voice of the customer programs where I've seen when people are really just sticking to their customers and not looking at their competitors' customers or potential ones. Without going into a huge pitch, though, I highly recommend people check out your demo because it's a really great tool you've put together. Can you share some of your insights about this approach, and how big of a change is it from traditional voice of the customer programs? And are companies getting better insights from this and from looking at their competitors' customers, and how do they use that insights as well?
Yeah, so this is definitely an aspect that we've had to think through a lot, because it is different than how a lot of traditional voice of the customer programs have thought about customer insights. And I like to think about it as benchmarking. It's as simple as benchmarking. I think, there's a lot of tools that are all around competitive intelligence and understanding exactly where your competitors are, what they're doing, and that is a different thing. Really, I like to think of the competitive analysis as part of voice of the customer as, not chasing what your competitor's doing, but knowing how they're serving their customers, and then using that to benchmark yourself, but also understand what options your customer could have, because it can help put issues into perspective. So, for example, we talked about pricing feedback. A lot of times that's dismissed because everyone complains about price.
Right.
Well, if you can benchmark how people are complaining about a certain aspect of your pricing, and it's not always about, if it's cheap or expensive. A lot of times it could be, it's really confusing the way that you price based on contacts and users. I never know when I'm going to be charged every month.
Right.
And that feedback, if you look at how your customers are complaining about that with competitors, you can kind of debunk the myth that, everyone struggles with this problem. It's not something we need to improve, or, oh, this is a big threat to our company because we see the issue being talked about a lot more. And we see that our competitors are actually really good at this where we struggle. And so it's really, when you can benchmark the feedback you're getting to how your customers are talking about them, suddenly you have a real understanding of where you stand in the marketplace. And, I think a lot of times the biggest pushback I get about including competitive data is less from marketing, because that's already a core part of their job, more from the customer success. But, it's something that customers are leaving to go to competitors. Like, I think we often bucket that pre-sale, but it's equally important across every stage of the journey.
Yeah, and I think it speaks a lot to the customer experience as well too, and that you can get insights around that through that type of data, and that is definitely in the realm of customer success to figure out how to deliver the experience that our customers want.
Yep, totally.
And out of curiosity as well too, when you find the companies that are most open to like voice of the customer and what the value that Loop is bringing, does it tend to be more the large established companies that have already been around but are pretty set in their ways, or do you find that newer, more entrepreneurial, agile type companies are much more open to this way of thinking and this way of running their business?
Yeah, so pre-COVID, it definitely was, there was a lot more explanation that I had to do around like why someone would want to be more agile in how they responded to customer needs, which sounds sad, but it's true. Post-COVID, everyone is thinking about this. So it's been less of a challenge with, getting people to be interested in changing and more of, how quickly they can move. So the companies we work with tend to be, less than 5,000 employees. They're, they're in their growth phase. Like they've seen churn. If you're too early, you're almost in like your glory years where you're just acquisition, and everything's great. And it's not that you're not trying to stay on top of problems, but you want to, pour gas on the fire and do what's working well and not get distracted by solving something that's, not a huge problem. But it's once companies experience that first issue where it's like, oh my gosh, we just experienced this big drop in retention, this churn, like we need to figure out what's going on. That's when I think starting to adapt processes like this becomes critical and a big need.
Wow, fantastic.
I think you've hit on some really key things. I love the way you talked about kind of product-led growth versus customer-led growth. And I know there's lots of schools of thought about the two there and how they integrate together, but I loved your way of thinking. And I really think, the voice of the customer, I've been with many organizations where it's been a real challenge to do it, B, exactly like you've talked through, and to get that feedback then shared across the business, but then to take actions from it. And these are problems that organizations across all shapes and sizes across the world are all struggling with this. And it's fascinating that you say seeing a big shift in the way of thinking now that we're kind of coming to the next phases of COVID, where we're beginning to see kind of the releasing of lockdown. One of the things that we like to do on our podcast is really give the listeners kind of a bold action that they can use to help drive change in their organizations and increase the success for their customers. We'd really love to ask you, Lauren, as to what kind of bold actions would you suggest listeners, customer success professionals, and other leaders can take today in how they can listen better to their customers and help to adopt that better customer-led growth strategy?
Yeah, so I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about how important it is for companies to take action. And at every organization that I've worked with, there's this big, hairy problem that's being ignored. So, and it's one that's usually exposed right away when we look at customer feedback. And when it's brought up, everyone just kind of nods and they're like, we know about this. And often these are these deeply rooted systemic issues that take a lot of effort to fix, so nothing is done. And my challenge for leaders would be to try something. I think a lot of times we wait and want to build this perfect solution that solves the problem in a holistic way, but we should be taking a small step forward on solving that big problem. And again, product management has really led the way for this, at the way they think about breaking down a big project that used to be delivered, you know, in 1 to 2 installments per year. Now they're breaking that into incremental chunks so value can be delivered every day, every week. And I think there's an opportunity for experienced success marketing leaders to take these same big challenges and roll out small improvements so that they're taking action and not waiting and letting these issues fester. So that would be my bold action that I would challenge.
Excellent. That's absolutely superb. It really is. I think this
Yeah.
has been such a great conversation. I truly believe, you know, when you get your voice of the customer done properly, there are some awesome insights and changes you can do to drive more value. And I think done properly, it actually helps bring the organizations together and it helps break down those silos.
Yes.
But getting there is so hard to do.
Yeah.
I for one am super excited about kind of seeing the growth of your company, and I want to keep a close watch on what you guys do because it is a really key area.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here, and love seeing your product. Encourage people to take a demo. Love to hear more about it. You know, I follow you on LinkedIn, and it's great to see the information that you post out there as well too. So thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you both so much. Let's do it again soon.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Great. Take care.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks everyone for being part of this episode of the Jason's Take On, and please join us again soon for our regular episodes where Jason and I share our insights about different issues for customer success and other great guests coming up in the future. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye now.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.